Hey everyone, it's been a while. So I'm gonna start off with an apology. 2019 has been kicking my butt health-wise. I spent the first week of January super sick, and then once I started getting better at that, I hurt my back cleaning my apartment, and then I started having issues again with this nerve thing in my arm, and then I've had 2 migraines as well, and we're only halfway through the month. And now I'm cramping hella bad because of my period. So it's been a month. So yeah. This whole time I have been thinking nonstop about all the videos that I've meant to record, wanted to record, etc. And I feel really bad. And even though I still feel like ass, I'm gonna make a video today. So we're here today with my December wrap up. And yes, I know it is over halfway through the month now at this point, but I still want to do my wrap up, especially since a good chunk of the books on it are from my TBR that you picked for me. So here we go. So I am going to start with the books that you guys picked for me. The first thing I'm going to talk about is volumes 1 through 3 of Alex and Ada. I did read all 3 volumes, and I actually didn't know that this series is only 3 volumes, so that means that I read the entirety of it. I had mixed feelings about this. It was good, and it tackled a lot of really deep and really big issues on personhood, what makes someone sentient, what makes humans humans, but I felt like it did it at the expense of feeling natural. And what I mean by that is there were a lot of instances of just like word vomit where the characters would go on these long monologues, and just also the dialogue between each other. It didn't seem like how people talk to each other. Maybe that was intentional because it is a series about AI and AI rights, and what, if we have robots that have sentience, what do we do about that, and what kind of rights do they have? I do like kind of the message they had, and the things that the story tackled, but I felt like the way it was tackled and done just felt more essay and speech-like than the natural story that it seemed to be trying to convey. So, I mean, you can take with that what you will. I would still recommend it. I want to say I gave this one 3 out of 5 or 4 out of 5 stars. It honestly might have been a 3.5. I'm not sure. Overall. So, I would still recommend it, but just go in knowing that some of the dialogue is a little bit weird. The next thing that I read that you guys picked out for me was Smoke Gets in Your Eyes and Other Lessons from the Crematory. This one actually doubled up for me because I did participate in Witchathon, and this one I counted it for 2 prompts for Witchathon. A book that you got as a gift, because I did get this in a book exchange, and a book that challenges your perspective. I talked super in depth about my feelings on why I picked this book, and why I thought it might challenge me to see things from a different perspective in my TBR. So if you're interested in hearing about that, I would recommend checking out the TBR. I do believe I have timestamps because I know that one is super long. But I do want to say that I absolutely love this. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It's a really heartfelt and endearing memoir about her journey through getting into the funeral industry, and kind of I like the way that she showed how she felt going into it, and kind of how she thought things were going to be and what her goals were, and how those evolved over time throughout the course of this book, to the way she thinks and feels about things today. If it does have a lot of morbid humor, so if morbid humor is not your jam, you might not enjoy this as much as I did, but I have a really morbid sense of humor, and I super appreciated it. If you are interested in learning more about the death and funeral industry, about more natural burial practices, and your options as far as what happens to your body after you die, I would definitely recommend this book. I really liked it, and it was a great pick, so I wanted to thank you guys for picking this out for me. So the third book that was picked for me, I actually started back in October, but I hadn't finished it yet. I had only gotten like a little bit way through it, so it was actually perfect that it was picked for me, and that is Pet Sematary by Stephen King. I don't have my copy with me because I took it to my parents when I went to visit them for Christmas, and I left it in the car, and I don't feel like walking down the stairs to go get it, so I'll just put an image of the cover I have somewhere on the screen, but I really liked it. Get 5 out of 5 stars. It's definitely a slow burn as far as horror goes, but that worked really well, and I really liked that. I found it to be a really engaging read and just kept an atmosphere of just dread and uncomfortableness throughout the entire story. So definitely a great recommendation. So yeah. The last thing that you guys picked for me for my December Pick My TBR was a short story collection ebook called Once Upon a Curse, 17 Dark Fairy Tales. I did not finish this one. I did read 12 of the 17 stories, and the reason I didn't finish it and chose to kind of prioritize other reads was I got through 12 of the 17 stories, and when I do short story collections, I will write down what my rating is for each short story and then kind of average them to give my rating of the whole collection. And at 12 out of 17, the average rating is currently sitting at a 2.88. So that should tell you why I decided to kind of move on. There were a couple reasons why I've found this one kind of disappointing. First of all, it's called Once Upon a Curse, 17 Dark Fairy Tales. I don't know what these authors' definition of dark is, but it's not my definition of dark. I mean, almost all of them have like a super sweet, sappy, happily ever after. Most of them aren't even dark at all. And even the ones that have dark elements just have this sweet sappiness to them that almost completely negates any dark themes that they have. So that was super disappointing. And then honestly, except for like 2 or 3 of them, the writing was kind of not great. And I feel bad saying that, but that's how I felt. There were a couple, like I think like 2 or 3 out of those 12 that I did read that I gave 4 out of 5 stars, and that bumped up the rating. But with it sitting at a 2.88, that should tell you what I thought of some of the others. But yeah, if you really like fairy tale retellings and you aren't necessarily interested in a dark collection of them, then you might like this. But I just felt like I didn't get what was heavily advertised. Some of the stories didn't even make any kind of sense, and some of them the writing was just bad. It sucks because there were a couple, like I said, that I actually really liked, but other than that, yeah, it'll probably be a while before I finish this. Okay, so if you know what all was selected for my Choose Your Own TBR, you know what's coming next. I saved one of the most interesting for last, and the person that picked this for me actually said that they wanted someone to read it or picked it for me because a lot of people make jokes about this book but don't seem to actually like take a analytical critique to it, and that they kind of wanted to see that. Well, I'm gonna give that to you. So the last book was Taken by the T-Rex, a dinosaur erotica. Yeah. So this book is only 17 pages long, and is a dinosaur erotica. Now, I will tell you on the positive note, the first like half to 2/3 of this book actually weren't that bad. It was interesting. I was actually really surprised. I was like, holy crap, this book is gonna be good. For the first like half to 2/3 ish, it read like a semi-fantasy historical fiction-y book about Drin, a huntress back in cave person times, whatever you want to call it, and talked about the destruction of her village by the T-Rex and her wanting to go hunt down the T-Rex for revenge and the whole village overriding her and moving somewhere else. And then after that, it was like another author took over who was not as skilled as the first one. Like, the writing quality took a dive. Drin did like a 180 as far, like it wasn't even like reading the same character. And mind you, this is all happening in 17 pages. I want you to keep this in mind. So it was a wild ride. Drin became like a totally different person. Writing quality took a dive. This was about when the chase scene with the T-Rex. T-Rex finds their village again. It's 17 pages. I can't analytically describe this to you without spoilers. Sorry. T-Rex finds them. Drin has set up like traps and stuff apparently ahead of time. Cool, sounds like her. She starts running and like they're trying to like lead the T-Rex to these traps and stuff. And like I said, Drin is like very serious, very no nonsense, a skilled huntress, and also described earlier in the book as not really having much in the way of like sexual desire or interests in such physical intimacies. And all of a sudden during this, she is horny as fuck. Like, she's being chased by this angry T-Rex, and literally in the book it has a sentence about how she had to fight the urge to stop and masturbate while she's in a life or death chase with this T-Rex. And it's not even like, okay, it's a weird dinosaur erotica, whatever, but like her character is not written that way at all up until that point. And then she is supposed to be leading them to a third trap because the dinosaur is pretty beat up by her previous two traps. But because she is so horny, she kind of goes off in La La Land, and then when she like comes to, like stops daydreaming, she is backed up against like a rock wall or like a cliff in this like circular gorge, I guess, and the T-Rex is approaching. So she has just daydreamed her way into being trapped by this T-Rex. And then all of a sudden the T-Rex that's wanted to eat her until then, the T-Rex gets mega horny, picks her up with its tiny T-Rex arms, and then tries to like jam her down on its dino dick, like, and she's too small. She's just like rubbing up against it, but she's getting turned on by this. Now, let me take you back. She has dreamed of murder deathing this vile beast who killed her family and her entire village. Nothing but pure hatred for this beast. The entire rest of the story, many sentences dedicated to that. But now all of a sudden, she is into it. It's like a totally different character. Like, it's like, boom, I'm this way, boom, I'm this way. And that is where my problem comes in. So, here we are back at the T-Rex trying to, like, jam her down onto it. Like, she gets the idea, like, oh, maybe if I pleasure the T-Rex, it'll let me go. So she like bear hugs, like wraps around its genitalia. So as it's like bouncing her up and down. She's like squeezing it, and she gets the T-Rex off. And it describes her covered in jizz. She's like laying there, and then like this other dude who's in the village comes in. At that point, he tries to attack the T-Rex. It eats him, and then the T-Rex just leaves. And that's like pretty much the end of the story. So yeah, I don't know what else to say. It was weird, which is what I was expecting. I was expecting a strange erotica. I got that. But I had a problem with the main character's complete flip-flop of feelings and personality. And maybe I'm being too critical, but that's what I said I was going to be going into this. I thought when I began reading this that I was actually going to end up really liking it, but just couldn't. So yeah, that's my in-depth review of Taken by T-Rex. So since we're on erotica now, I guess I can go ahead and tell you about my Smudathon reads. I did meet my goal for how many of my picked for me TBR books I read before Smudathon began, so that I did participate in Smudathon. It started out strong, so I'll go ahead and talk about the first book, which was a 5 out of 5 for me, and that was Priest by Sierra Simone. It was way more deep and complex of a story than I thought it was gonna be. It was really, really good. It was really hot. It was really sweet and endearing too, and really complex and deep as far as the characters' inner thoughts, feelings, backstory, everything that was going on. I really, really liked it. 5 out of 5 stars. I can totally understand that this book might not be everybody's cup of tea because the main character is a priest. All the sex is consensual. There's not even any like dubious consent or non-con or anything in this book. So it is all consensual sex with a consenting adult. But they do it in the church. So I guess, little sacrilegious aspects. I got into a little mini conversation on Twitter with some other people doing Smudathon where we talked about how this is making us realize we might be into something called clergy porn. I may have gotten a book added to my future TBR called Pope. But yeah, if that's not like a total no for you, then I would highly, 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 highly recommend Priest by Sierra Simone. I'm really glad that I started with Priest because the rest of my Smudathon reads, to be totally honest, were either just okay or terrible. So, had a 5-star read at the beginning, and then, meh, or, why did I read this? So, the second book I read for Smudathon was Daddy's Baby Girl by M.L. Doss. I think I gave this one a 3 or a 3.5. It was just okay. My main issue with it was that any type of conflict or tension potential that this book could have had was just like swept under or like swept by. There was a lot of like really heavy things that could have been explored more in depthly. A really interesting like tense subplot that when it came to a head was just kind of like a side note almost, and that really bothered me. Everything was like, a lot of the characters were like very Mary Sue-esque, if you know what I mean. The morality and tension stuff was very like black and white, good versus evil type of thing. No like gray areas at all. So that kind of took away a lot of the enjoyment, especially because the conflict that was set up and was right there in the story, or like the teasers, I guess, for the conflict and tension, like they were really good and really interesting, and then when they became a thing to be dealt with, it was just rushed through, or like almost not even shown as you were reading, and I felt like that hurt the book. So if you want something that's like super sweet and tender and just like a real good, feel good, happy read with like no like hints of tension but no real conflict or danger, then I would check this book out. It's not bad. It just, I wanted certain things that weren't given to me in the book, so that kind of bumped it down from my personal enjoyment. The third book that I read, I enjoyed a bit more. It was The Incubus Aspray by Lola Delori. And it was a really cute story. It had like a fairy tale type feel, which I didn't know, but I actually really liked. The sexy bits were hot. The only thing that kept it from being a 5-star, honestly, was the writing. There were a lot of repeat words and phrases, like a noticeable amount of repeat words and phrases. There were some spelling mistakes, so I mean that kind of bothered me, but with all that, I still gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I mean, that's how much I like the story and like the characters. I think I will, in those kind of issues that I saw, I will probably still check out other things by this author, because those are things that, as they grow as an author and write more, are gonna go away. So I liked it enough to A, want to check out this author more, and B, even though it had spelling mistakes, words and phrases were repeated to a crazy degree, I still gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Love the story that much. So I would highly recommend that if you're looking for a 2 guys and a girl fairy tale feeling erotica, then I would definitely recommend it. The last thing that I read for Smonathon was Watching Sin by Lori King. I thought I was gonna like this a lot more than I did. I ended up giving it 2.5 stars. It was just, the characters' interactions were weird for the relationship that they were supposed to have pre the book. It's supposed to be a husband, his wife, and the husband's best friend that the couple had known for like ever. And their interactions were just, it didn't make sense for people who have known each other that long and been as comfortable with each other as they are. Like, they just acted really weird, and they would also like act a certain way for a couple pages and then like personality flip, which I've already talked about with Taken by T-Rex, when characters just suddenly become a different person with no real explanation. It's a pet peeve of mine. But also during the sex scenes, like, they could have been like real hot, but they, like, some of them, I guess the best way to put it, did not make anatomical sense. Like, the way that the bodies were described to be positioned, and it was either some contortionist ass shit or just like purely not anatomically possible, or made any anatomical sense the way it was written. And that distracted me enough to make it not even enjoyable, which sucks. But yeah, that's all I really have to say about that one. Other than that, I read 2 other things in the month of December. 1 graphic novel and then 2 manga volumes. The first thing was Nocturnals Volume 1, Black Planet. I had read this originally back in high school and really liked it. It's just a good, pulpy, gritty, supernatural, fun time. So if that description interests you, I would definitely recommend it. This is how the art style is inside of the book. So I was really happy to get a copy of this again. I read it originally, like I said, when I was in high school. One of my friends had it, and then when I was in college, I collected single issues of it. Then I moved a fuck ton in my early 20s, and it's just one of those things I got lost in a move. So I was happy to buy a trade paperback collection of them. And 5 out of 5 stars for me, enjoyment level. And the last thing that I read is actually 2 things. I read volume 1 and 2 of La Esperanza, which I believe is how you pronounce that. If I'm wrong, please tell me in the comments. It is a boys love manga. I ended up giving it 3 out of 5 stars, and mainly that's because the story is a little bit hard to follow. The parts that I can follow are really interesting. A lot of like mysterious, possibly tragic backstories and stuff, and totally has that goody two shoes falls for bad boy vibe going on, which I dig. So I'm really liking it. I already have volume 3, and I mean, I plan to read the whole series. I just only got to volumes 1 and 2. I'm hoping that the story becomes a little bit more coherent as time goes on, because like I said, it's sometimes the way the information you're given and the way the story flows makes it hard to follow, but I still enjoyed it. I still want to read the rest of the series to find out kind of what's going on and see if more of the backstory is kind of revealed. So I'll probably read volume 3 soon-ish, since I already own it. But yeah. I've mentioned it in a couple other previous videos, but for 2019, I'm asking people to pick books off of my owned TBR shelf to read. I have a shelf on Goodreads that has books I own TBR, which I will link in the description below. So if you want to pick something off of that and comment it down below, I am committing to reading at least 2 things off of that list every month. So I will read at least 24 books picked out for me through the year. Since it's already partway through January, I'm not going to do a traditional TBR video. I did pick 2 books already that I am in the process of reading that were picked for me as part of this challenge. Going forward, like I said, I have all of 2019 to fill, and if I can read more than 2 off of that list, then I will. So yeah, if you want to pick what I read or what I potentially read, then go ahead and check out that shelf and comment down below. I hope your 2019 is going fantastically, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Good night, bookworms.